Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is Board of Epic Fury. And of course, I was doing a play on the Board of Peace and the war in Iran that has happened and how it is being called Operation Epic Fury. So a very depressing, heartbreaking mashup, the Board of Epic Fury. And I had a really hard time writing the essay this week because I have had a really hard time since last, it's now like a little over a week ago, that Friday night, early Saturday morning, I was still awake when the announcement came that the United States had started bombing Iran with Israel. And I just, I just felt I just felt so scared and sad and anxious and all the things, all the emotions. And I have continued to feel all of the emotions imaginable since then. I woke up Saturday morning and I have Iranian friends. And one of those people was celebrating. One of my friends was devastated, and that's part of what I obviously at that point we had heard about the girls' school in Tehran being bombed. And it's now, I think, 170 young girls whose lives have been lost. And, one of the things that I really wanted to write about and talk about is this idea of people not being a monolith. That, I think this is part of what has happened that has been so difficult in the discourse generally, is that there's such a desire for the binary, like you're either like this way or that way. You're either, you're on one side or the other. You're either going to celebrate that the Ayatollah Khomeini is dead and the Iranian people are out from under this authoritarian regime, or you're not, you're like, and it's not, it is not a one or the other. There's no one or the other thing here, and so I think part of what I wanted to try to talk about and write about is that idea, is that, even with the Iranian people and here in America and in Israel, everywhere, there's this desire to paint people with one brush and to conflate the leader of a country with the people who live there. And if you think about what's happening here in America, right, and how divided we are, you have, people outside our country who hate Americans because of what this president is doing. They're just disgusted with America. How could you elect this man again? And it's understandable. I understand when I run into that, and I run into it a lot. And, people in Europe and other parts of the world are looking at this country. They cannot believe that we elected this man again. So if you live here and you let's say you support him or you vote, you don't maybe read other, like maybe your algorithm is completely different than mine, and which you're probably not listening to me if it is, but then maybe that's news to you, but there's just a huge, we've alienated our allies. Because of this president who, is very disparaging toward NATO countries who came to our aid after 9/11. Very disparaging, very, very ungrateful. He said just horribly ungrateful things to countries who sent their young people to defend us, and countries whose not all those people came home. So this idea, even here, right? Like if you take our country as an example, you've got 342 million people who live in the United States, roughly. And of those 342 million people, only 77 million of them voted for this president and this administration. So, and 74 million voted for Harris-Walz, and a lot of people stayed home and didn't vote at all. And some people were not eligible to vote. Anyone who's not a citizen cannot vote. We don't have a problem with that in this country. There is no voter fraud to speak of. It is such a non-issue that the few instances where that shows up, they have no impact whatsoever on free and fair elections. So we have a lot of people who are not eligible to vote. Millions and millions of our immigrant community, anyone who's not a United States citizen cannot vote in our elections. So 77 million of 342 million people living here, 77 million voted for this president. 74 million did not. They voted for someone else. And then, as I said, a lot of people stayed home and did not vote for anyone. And then there were people who are not allowed to vote at all. So when you conflate this president with the people who live in this country, if people do that from outside the United States, if they just say, oh, these awful Americans who are, doing, you're missing a huge part of the story, right? There's 74 million of us here who are devastated, never wanted this to happen, did not vote for this person. Any of the times would never have voted for him. I'm one of them, and I could not be more devastated that he is the president again. I can't believe it. I am astounded that people could get past so many. The minute he said he grabs women by the pussy, I can't believe people still voted for that. I cannot believe it. This tendency to talk about the people, to talk about countries this way, it's the same thing. Like how it is here is how it is in any country. You're never going to get millions upon millions of people in any country who all feel exactly the same way about everything. So you're not even going to get 40 people in a room who all feel the same way about everything, let alone millions of people. So it's a thing that we tend to do, especially if we're talking about countries we've never visited, let alone lived in for any length of time. And so you can get yourself into a lot of trouble that way, trying to speak like an expert about how the Iranian people feel. Well, the Iranian people are celebrating in the streets. They're so some some of the Iranian people are celebrating in the streets, and some of the Iranian people are devastated to see their country being bombed. Some of the Iranian people are outside a school right now trying to pull their daughters out from under the rubble. You know, there are Iranians that don't live in Iran anymore who have different feelings about what is happening. You can't paint the Iranian people with one brush. And it's an ignorant thing to do that. People do it all the time, but it's not, it's not an educated perspective. You're missing a huge part of the story when you do that. And it's the same in Israel. There are people who are they're Israelis who are not okay with Netanyahu, do not support what he is doing, what he has done, what has happened in Gaza, who are heartbroken and devastated about what has gone on there. It's not a monolith. And it's very painful when, these conversations happen online and you just can't have any kind of nuanced conversation because people are they want to, put everyone quickly in a box. They want the binary conversation. You're either, I have my political perspective, my prism that I'm seeing everything through. And so I want to hear what I want to hear so I know where to place this other person, right? Like, are they with me or against me? Are they in the good pool of people or the pool of people I don't like? And, most of these things are that's not what you're going to find. You're going to find people who are having all kinds of devastating feelings in all kinds of different directions. And if you want to really be having meaningful conversation, you have to leave some space for people to feel safe to express themselves. If you immediately start screaming at somebody or jumping down someone's throat, you don't leave them any room to tell you about the different ways that they're feeling, whatever it is. I don't want my tax dollars spent killing anyone ever, ever. I want my tax dollars spent taking care of people. I don't want this. I'm not okay with what's happening. I didn't vote for this, so it would be nice if people would extrapolate and say to themselves, okay, like there are things happening in the country where I live that I don't like, that I don't support, that break my heart, that are devastating to me. So let me assume the same is true in other countries before I just paint everyone in another country with the same brush. But on social media, for example, that's what people do so quickly. They want the hashtag, they want the quick take, they're not, it's not an environment that is conducive for these painful, emotional conversations where people want to be heard. They want to be able to talk about their heartbreak or their confusion or their devastation over the situation. And that's one of the things that I think is so incredibly sad about what's happened is we've lost a lot of those people that I think really would love to be having conversations are feeling really alienated now. One of the best essays I have read this entire time about, for example, Gaza and, October 7th, October 8th, Palestine, Israel, what happened, was written by Joanna Chen. And you can still find it. I think it's called From the Edges of a Broken World. It is so beautiful. And, those are the kinds of conversations we need to be making space for. And the original publication, actually, it was a Guernica, they pulled it. And now it's available somewhere else. I can link it in the, I'll link it in the, underneath the podcast here. But they pulled it because people are, that's how heated it is. You can't even have a conversation. And to this day, it's one of the most beautiful, painful things I've read. I don't know what we're going to do if we can't. For me, I am never okay ever when I see children dying anywhere, especially if we're talking about children who are dying because of war, because of greed, because of depravity. It doesn't matter to me where it's happening. It's always devastating. It always stops me in my tracks. It's always a failure. It's always a failure if we are allowing children to die, whether it's happening in the Congo or Sudan or Gaza, whether it's happening in Israel, whether it's happening here in the United States. Every day when our kids go to school, it doesn't matter to me where it's happening. I don't mete out my empathy for only some children. It doesn't work like that. You either have empathy or you don't have empathy. It's not a thing that you say, only these kids get my empathy. These other children don't get my empathy. All children are all of our responsibility here on this planet. If you're an adult, our job is to take care of the most vulnerable. That's the job. And so, when you see that is not happening and that babies are dying, it's a failure. It's a moral and ethical failure. And, I think part of what completely is so difficult here in the States is the cognitive dissonance piece of things, for people like me who did not want this, did not vote for this. I don't want my tax dollars being spent this way. I want affordable health care, more funding for public schools, social programs, access to clean air and water, a livable wage, all these things that they tell us, universal health care. We can't have affordable childcare and daycare and parental leave. All these things they tell us, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, free school lunches. Those are the things that I would like my tax dollars to be going toward. Environmental protections. And these are all the things they tell us we can't afford, but then we can spend $1 billion a day on a war. Always we can afford death and destruction. Always we can afford to go for the oil. We can afford to kill people. We can bomb people. But we can't take care of people. It's such garbage. It's such a lie. It's a lie. And, part of what is, as I was starting to say, so difficult for someone like me who didn't vote for this, who actively tried to make sure this did not happen, who shouted from every rooftop I possibly could, do not vote for these people. Please do not vote for these people, is to watch part of what happened, I could be here for 8 days if we started going back and talking about, too much history here. So I'm debating because I wrote about I'm just deciding how far back to go. Part of what happened, I'll just go back to like December, the end of December 2025. There were protests in Iran because the currency just went into a free fall, partly because of the United States, which Scott Bessent talked about that openly. That we contributed. We were adding to that pressure. The economy was already in, precarious state, and we pushed it like over the edge, and people started protesting. It started in Tehran. There were shopkeepers went on strike, and then more people joined, and then there were nationwide strikes. And the Ayatollah Khomeini and the authorities in Iran responded with lethal force. They called the protesters rioters. Sounds familiar, right? And they were killing people in the streets and arresting people as young as 14 and putting them in detention centers. And a lot of them were in incommunicado detention. Their families couldn't find them, couldn't speak to them, couldn't locate them. Does this not sound familiar to you? So, our president here was, using his Truth Social, tweeting at the Iranian people and saying, if they keep using lethal force against you, I'll come and intervene. This man? You think this man is intervening because he cares about citizens in Iran, protesters in Iran being killed on the streets, human rights violations, and people being detained? Hi, Renee Good, Alex Preddy, are you kidding me right now? It's so insane for me to listen to that and to imagine that anyone's believing that narrative, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about that happening here. He's causing that to happen here. He's sending ICE into states and cities, blue states and cities he does not like, and that's what's happening here in the country he is the president of. So you think he cares about what's happening there? He doesn't care. You think he cares about human rights violations and what's happening in these detention centers there? People here are dying in detention centers. It just happened this week. A man died in a detention center because of a toothache. They didn't get him medical attention. This poor man died of a toothache he got sepsis. It became infected. We have people being sexually abused, sexually assaulted in these detention centers, and they say very openly, there's nothing we can do. We can't protect people in these detention centers. Sorry. There are reports of worms and mold in the food, like at Dilley Detention Center, where they've got families. That's where most of the families go when they take kids like Liam, right? Ramos, when he was with his dad at Dilley. There are hundreds of reports coming out of Dilley that these kids, the food is full of worms. This man does not care about human rights violations or what's happening to protesters. So when I hear things like that, my brain explodes. My mind. It's so painful to think that anyone would believe that. He's not sending any of our military to Iran because he cares about freedom for people. That is not what's going on. This is a self-serving, transactional narcissist, an old man a billionaire. He's been making billions of dollars in his second term. These are all things you can fact check. I always link everything in the essays so you can go. His family has made billions of dollars since his second term. He is just raking in money hand over fist and could not care less about Americans, about Iranians. Like, this is just all about what's good for me. How do I make more money? That's really it. And so it's painful, and so many of the people in power are these old men who are authoritarian, billionaires who do not care about the people they're supposed to be serving. They're supposed to be public servants. They don't care about the people they're supposed to serve. They don't think of what they're doing as serving anyone but themselves. They're in their last decade of life. And, here we are. One of my Iranian friends was saying that we're heading into Ramadan here, and they just martyred the Ayatollah Khomeini, and he probably would have died. And now they've made him a martyr. They're all different perspectives on, this is why I'm saying there's no monolith. These are human beings, and human beings are going to have different feelings about different things, whether you're talking about Americans, whether you're talking about Palestinians, whether you're talking about Israelis, whether you're talking about Iranians. Not all people have the same feelings about everything. And so you reduce people when you start talking about, people feel this way or that way. It's like, unless you've lived somewhere, you are, not an expert, and you probably really want to defer to people who have lived in these places, who are living there now, who can speak intelligently about the different ways that people are feeling. And if you're lucky enough to know people in all of these, in countries where things are happening, that is always your best bet is to be, for me at least, I always want to hear personal stories from people. I want to try to understand as many different perspectives as possible. But this binary, hashtag, like, this is not helpful. These people that are, like social media warriors, but like not actually trying to help anyone. Like that's not helpful to anyone. You want to be helping people as much as possible. And I'll tell you, like, one thing that helps is just try really hard to not be putting these people in power. These people, and they've done such an incredible job of getting us to scream at each other while they're just, like breaking laws left and right and wreaking havoc and dropping bombs. And I don't know, I don't know. It's just, it's so painful to watch. And we have, the girls' school, right? It's like that also was incredibly painful because out of one side of their mouths, they're saying like, oh, these are high precision airstrikes, high precision and advanced technology. And then out of the other side, it's like you just bombed a girls' school. So if it's high precision and advanced technology, did you do it on purpose? Or are you so incompetent that you used an old map? Because that's, the other story that's being It's like, and you have a president, that's the other part of the reason that I was just feeling so devastated over the last week is because I have no faith in this administration. They've changed the objectives like 4 times in 4 days, right? First it was, they were about to have like nuclear capability, so we had to, strike first. Well, there's zero evidence of that. We were told we already dropped a bomb back in June. I think it was like June 22nd, and took out their nuclear capability. There's, again, I linked this, all evidence points to it being years before they were going to be anywhere close to having nuclear capability. And then it became, it's we need a regime change. But oops, we killed the like 4 people that we had in mind, so I guess it's not that. And then, then over the last few days, there started to be reports that it was like, officer, there's like this commanders and officers, there's this conversation where the commanders are telling officers to tell the troops that the president has been anointed by Jesus Christ to start this war and set off Armageddon and prepare for the second coming. It's a holy war. At which point I really don't know what to say anymore. This is not what we do. The military is supposed to be free from all of that. We have people in our military from many different faiths. And that is some extremist stuff there. That is radical. That is a radical religious viewpoint there that is terrifying and does not belong in any messaging to our troops. That is deeply concerning and not normal. So this is why you're someone like me and you're hearing these things, and then they put out, a video of like 40 people praying over the president in the Oval Office. Okay. This man who says he grabs women by the pussy, who has been accused by a woman in the Epstein files, right, that the DOJ tried to pull out. They were trying to hide these files from this woman who was interviewed 4 different times by this FBI, by the FBI under this president, 4 different times. She accused this president of raping her when she was 13 years old. And they interviewed her 4 different times and then tried to hide those files. Why? Why, if there's nothing to hide, why pull those out? If she is not saying things that are credible, why would you go back 4 times? Why are we the only country that hasn't launched investigations? No arrests have been made. I saw a thread that someone had that was just really captured how I was feeling. And she said, the way the United States treats children as casualties of war, casualties of men's desires, and casualties of the Second Amendment has her in it's just changed her. And she is in such a state of absolute rage over it. I want to give credit where credit is due. Margot Christine is her name. And it really, really spoke to me. I was like, yeah, it's so painful right now that is another thing that occurred to me, is that the way this war started is at a girls' school with absolute carnage, which is such an American. It's brutal. Am I allowed to be upset about that? It's like you feel like you you have to be careful about being upset about things, about being heartbroken. You have to be really careful about how you express, when you're heartbroken, because, if you say you're heartbroken over like this girl's school, I can't even tell you. Like, I've seen some things where people online, oh, you only care when it's like, this administration. It's like, no, stop right now. Just stop yourself. These particular girls, these girls are gone now. They're gone. And this is always what happens in war. Okay? Innocent people die. Always. We have 6 service members gone. It's like, this is the toll the price you pay is people die. And I'm always not okay with that. It doesn't matter to me where they're from. It doesn't matter to me where they're from. That should not be a problem for me to say. It shouldn't be a problem for me to say, I'm devastated that innocent people are going to die and have already died. And when we've gotten to that point where, your empathy can be weaponized, and we have terms like toxic empathy, like that's, I am not, that's a litmus test I will not take. That's just not, I refuse it. It's, for me, we are on a spinning planet in one solar system in a vast universe for a blink of time. We own nothing here. This is not ours. This is not our planet. These things that we say, my house, my yard, my tree, we're not taking any of this stuff with us. This planet we're visitors here. We show up, boom, we're gone. We're here for a blink. And it is a shock to me and a heartbreak to me that so many people use their blink of time to be violent, to try to plant a flag, to hoard, to be cruel. It's such a waste. It's so ignorant. It is so incredibly sad. And when that ignorance leads to the death of innocent people, and especially children, I'm not okay. And I don't know why anyone is okay. And I don't know why anyone is okay right now in this country, period. I don't, I hope that the young people can try to live their lives right now, because this is not their mess. But the grown-ups in the room, really, anyone who's still supporting this administration, I genuinely don't know what to say anymore, because some people, people were saying so many things like, well, I had to vote for him because I'm Christian. Okay, this man's not Christian. Are you kidding me? He's in the Epstein files 1 million times. He was best friends with a known pedophile for 15 years, and he got the man's girlfriend out of federal prison, where she was for 20 years behind bars. She was convicted and put behind bars for 20 years. And he got her this great sweetheart deal. Now she's in a prison camp with no bars where she gets to go to Pilates and eat organic food and have her dog. He did that for her. You think this man's Christian? She's been convicted of raping little children and helping Jeffrey Epstein rape children, girls. This is no Christian. He is a lying, grifting, con man, rapist, adjudicated rapist, 34-time convicted felon. He's not a Christian. He's cheated on every wife he's ever had. He's lusted after his daughter publicly. So let's not do that. I mean, come on, let's not do that. He was a Democrat when it served him. Now he's a Republican because it's serving him. He serves. He'll say whatever he needs to say to serve himself. He's no Christian. So people say, I had to vote for him because, I'm a Christian and I don't believe in abortion. Well, look at all the children dying. If you are pro-life, please look at all the children dying. Take a look around, and not just abroad, here in this country too. This man who will not talk about, school shootings, thoughts and prayers, children are dying in the detention centers. Do you not care because they're brown children? Then you're not Christian either. Jesus was a brown person. I don't know, what to say, but Jesus would have fed the little children. He wouldn't have said, I'm only going to feed the white children. Children can't afford school lunch. Jesus, I'm pretty positive, would have been like, let's feed the little children. Let's do that. Let's make sure if children are dying because too many people have these crazy guns, let's not do that. Let's not deport people in these horrific ways and grab people on the street and throw them down onto the ground and throw them into the backs of vans. And come on, this is not, let's just not with the Christianity, it's insulting. It's insulting. And America first, we're going to vote for him because we don't want any more of these expensive, drawn out wars in other places. Well, hi, look where we are. $1 billion a day war that we did not need to, there was no imminent threat. This was a war of choice by the president of peace looking for his Nobel Peace Prize. Come on now. It's a joke. And the price of eggs has not come down and it's about to go up. So, I don't know. It's just the last thing I want to say is the problem here is that you've got a bunch of people fighting with each other, and here in America, right? You've got red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican. Yeah, and he's great at it. He's got his AI videos dropping feces on the radical left lunatics, whatever. They've done a brilliant job at Fox News, getting the conservative people to really hate the liberal people and the liberal people to, there's a huge divide here. Meanwhile, what everyone should be looking at is the billionaire class. These are the guys that are, it's if you look in this administration, all of them are in the 1%. They're in the 1% of wealth. And they own the social media platforms, right? You've got Zuck has Meta, he's got Facebook, he's got Instagram, Threads. And I think, Instagram and Threads are just, they're like funnels. I mean, Facebook has become very conservative. I'm not even comfortable on Facebook anymore. I've gotten attacked there so many times now. It's just really not what it was. You have Musk owns X. You've got now TikTok was just basically purchased by Oracle. And that's Ellison. That's Richard Ellison. And he's a huge Trump guy, huge Trump supporter. And then CBS, Barry Weiss, and Rupert Murdoch obviously owns Fox News. I mean, Jeffrey Bezos has the Washington Post. So you have all these billionaires who own the media and they own the social media platforms that we're on. And if you think that's not having an impact on like everything, the way that the information that we're getting and these echo chambers that we're in and the way that, the rage is being fed, I don't know what to say, but they're doing a great job of keeping us screaming at each other so we're not paying attention. And these billionaires, they love this administration because no regulations and tax breaks and, making money hand over fist. And this particular administration, they don't care about checks and balances. They don't care about Congress. They don't care about the Supreme Court. They don't care. He doesn't care. So it's a free for all. Just give me some money and I'll pardon you. Kristi Noem, did you see? She got moved sideways. She's not fired. She got moved sideways because she funneled, it's like $220 million of taxpayer funds for this ad campaign. DHS, she's sitting on a horse telling undocumented people to self-deport. And she awarded, I think it's $143 million of that money to her friend at like Strategy Marketing Group, I think. But she did it through this shill company that was created, in order to do it, to channel the money through, called like America Safe Media LLC. I mean, ProPublica did a great story on it, again, linked in the essay, so you can look at it. But these people are corrupt through and through, all of them, and they're making money hand over fist. And we have no affordable health care. We have, cuts to Medicaid that like we've never seen before. It's anyway, it's very, very painful to watch. And what we need to be doing is we need to stop screaming at each other. We need to start being able to like take some deep breaths and have those nuanced conversations, and really try to meet people where they are and allow them to speak and allow people to have complicated feelings and listen and, really listen with the intent to understand. We need to start healing and recognizing that the people we need to be fighting are this billionaire class that do not care about us at all. And if we don't get it together, there isn't going to be anything to save. It's really, really sad to me. And meanwhile, more children will die. Like, we have got to get it together here. These are not the people, and not just in this country. Like, we really need to have a full sweep of leadership quickly, because this authoritarian, patriarchal, chest pounding, bombing, we're going to pretend everything's a video game and look at these NPCs on the ground. That's how they treat us. Can't you see it? They don't care if it's girls in a school, if it's our kids at school here in the States, if it's our service members. They don't care. They don't care. It's all a big game. The White House official account was putting out these like horrible videos, these memes with SpongeBob. It's demeaning to people who are putting their lives on the line. It's like we really need to be banding together here and starting to try to regroup and think about what kind of country we want to be, who we want to be, and also really seeing if we can repair the damage with our allies and like what are we doing generally? Just we have everything we need on this planet for everyone if we just were sharing. I know that that also sounds really radical and sadly naive in this day and age, but from my perspective, this everything else that we're doing is insane. And what I'm saying is just rational, normal. So I hope some of this like helped some of you feel less alone if you've been struggling too. And I hope that you're taking care of yourself. You know, it is important to like fill your own tank with some joy. You can't let these people steal your joy. You got to find some things to like refill that little, I was calling it like the tiny pot of joy we carry in our hearts every day. Like you got to refill that because that's fuel. You gotta, you know, find ways. Joy is an act of resistance as well, right? But not to check out and act like everything's fine, la la la. You know, to be finding the right balance here and trying to help. It's like an all hands on deck moment, and you know this whole idea of like whatever it is that made you vote for this person. I just want you to really start thinking to yourself like the Maha moms, right? Like if you were worried about like red dye number 40, hi, like if your kid gets called to war, do you know what they're going to be breathing in? I like what? People are getting measles in detention centers. And I like, do you want polio? Like, please just really pause, breathe, try to come back to center, you know? Okay. I love y'all, and you know where to find me if you need a little support. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye for now.